Good morning, brothers. Today we're going to speak about Mary Shelley, one of the most renowned authors of the English Romanticism. There are many interpretations of this novel, Frankenstein. We're going to speak about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And among the various interpretations, I'm going to focus on the autobiographical interpretations. Just so you see how rich this novel is, some have envisioned in it a symbol of man fighting nature, and how nature rebels against man when man tries to overpower it. And I think you can see that in the novel very clearly. Or it can also be a metaphor about science and technology, how they can become a danger for mankind. Some others have seen it as a reflection about teenage years. A teenager who's trying to find his sense of identity and doesn't fit in. Some others have seen it as a symbol for human genetics and how to create and how to manipulate human life. There's also a relationship between God and his creation and how creation rebels against God. Some others have seen in it a meditation on politics and how politics ended up creating horrors, anarchy, and the horrors of the French Revolution. Some others have seen it as a history of mankind, how mankind is gradually gaining awareness of itself, and then longing for something that mankind cannot achieve. The conflict between children and their parents, a reflection about human rights, that is what the creature is advocating for. Some others have said, no, it's not a problem of science, it's the problem of neglect. So what Victor Frankenstein achieves is great, but he neglects his creation. Some others have seen it as a reflection on morals and aesthetics, and I think I've spoken enough about how many interpretations it has. It has a very wide range of interpretations, but today, just to give you an introduction into Mary Shelley's life, I'm going to focus on the autobiographical notes. So here you have the image of Mary Shelley, and let me begin with her birth. Mary Shelley was born in August 1797. I don't remember the exact day, but it was August 1797. Her mother, who was a renowned philosopher in her time, Mary Wollstonecraft, she died shortly after giving birth to her. And in one way or another, Mary Shelley felt guilty for this. And here you can start seeing how this reflects in the novel, how by giving birth to her, her mother had died, and how Victor Frankenstein had created a monster that would eventually kill him and destroy everything that was dear to him. This also marks, in a significant way, the whole integrity of the novel. The absence of the mother. First of all, the creature, the monster, has no mother. And that's how Mary Shelley felt herself. She felt alienated. If you think about Victor Frankenstein's family, there's no mother. And in the section that you are going to read, you are going to find some reflections about the Delacy family. There's no mother. So that's a perfect family. There's a father, and there's Felix, the symbol of happiness. And there's Agatha, his sister. Agatha, the symbol of goodness. And then Felix's wife comes in. Well, it's his fiancée, who would eventually become his wife. She's Sophie, symbol of wisdom. So that's the perfect family, but there's no mother. The mother figure is absent from that family. When she was still a child, her father remarried, Mary Jane Clairmont, and she had a very difficult relationship with her stepmother. Some say that Mary Shelley exaggerates and she overstresses the Cinderella stepmother role Mary Jane Clairmont played in her own life. But regardless of how evil or how normal she was. The point is that Mary Shelley felt this very difficult relationship with her stepmother, and that is also reflected in the novel. Furthermore, that stepmother didn't come along into the family. She came with 2 children from previous marriages, she said, although she was never married before, and a child on the way. That added to a previous child from Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley herself, who was not Mary Shelley, she was Mary Godwin. Shelley is the name of her future husband. So that adds a total of 5 siblings. And she felt displaced. She felt displaced in the family and she didn't find her place. And the sense of alienation and the sense of not fitting in is also something that we can see almost all through the novel. Let me just read you a few quotes from the novel itself. Chapter 10. I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel, whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed. Everywhere I see bliss, from which I am alone irrevocably excluded. I was benevolent and good. Misery made me a fiend. And then a few chapters ahead, chapter 13. But where were my friends and relations? No father had watched my infant days. No mother had blessed me with smiles and caresses. Or, if they had, all my past life was now a blot, a blind vacancy in which I distinguished nothing. From my earliest remembrances, I had been as I then was in height and proportion. I had never yet seen a being resembling me or who claimed any intercourse with me. What was I? The question again recurred to be answered only with groans. So that quest of self, that longing for a sense of identity. I repeat this final part. What was I? The question again recurred to be answered only with groans. When she was 14, having so much trouble with her stepmother and maybe some health problems, her father sent Mary Shelley to live with another family. And that was a happy family who received her, but nonetheless, Mary felt as a stranger in that family. And she spent 2 years with that family. She was cast away from her home. That's how she felt. She felt rejected, and she didn't feel she fit into this new family. When she returned, it was then when she met Percy B. Shelley, who would eventually become her husband, but that is farther ahead. The point is that Percy B. Shelley was already married to Harriet, and he decided to elope with Mary Shelley, who was Mary Godwin, as I already said. But they didn't elope alone. They eloped also with Jane Clare, who was Mary Shelley's sister, or half-sister. So that made Mary Shelley again feel rejected and displaced. She didn't occupy Percy's heart. She had to share Percy's love with the wife, Harriet, and at least there was some kind of affection relationship with Jane, the other sister. So she didn't feel like she fit and that like she belonged. Where did they go? They left England and went to France. And what was happening in France during those times? It was the aftermath of the Napoleonic Wars. So they saw how destroyed Europe had become after the Napoleonic Wars, and that gave food for thought and reflection about politics. The ideals of Romanticism that we had tried to embody through our revolutions and our fight for freedom, they have brought all this that now I see in France. They saw destruction. Furthermore, in 1815, she gave birth prematurely to a daughter who died just a couple of weeks after her birth. And Mary Shelley was haunted by visions and dreams. One of the most recurrent dreams she had was a dream in which she brought back her daughter Clara to life. So you can see also a very strong link, a very powerful connection with the plot of the novel, how it's bringing some inanimated corpse back into life. Then, in 1816, she gave birth to another son. This son would live to to the age of 5. His name was William. And the name is very important. First, because she named him William to be reconciled with her father. That was her father's name. So you can see also the conflict between the child and the father through the novel. But if you read the novel, you will find out that William is also a character in the novel. And Mary Shelley described William just with same features, with the same traits as her own child. And what happens to the child in the novel? He's also killed by the monster. So there she's putting a lot, I would even say she's putting too much of herself into the novel, and that is another autobiographical element. Then, from the years 1818 to 1822, we can say she enjoyed some peace in her life, and that was the only peaceful oasis in her life. But let me just highlight this point. It's almost prophetic what she wrote in Frankenstein. This is not autobiographical, but it reflected in a very graphic way what would happen in 1822 when this oasis of peace would vanish. In 1822, her husband, Percy Shelley, died. He drowned in a storm. Some even say that he had no joy for life, so he decided to embark in spite of the storm, and he died as a consequence of that. She didn't know about this until several days afterwards, and Percy Shelley's body was burned on the seashore. In chapter 24 of Frankenstein, the creature says, "I shall die, and what I now feel be no longer felt. Soon these burning miseries will be extinct. I shall ascend my funeral pyre triumphantly and exult in the agony of the torturing flames. The light of that conflagration will fade away. My ashes will be swept into the sea by the winds. My spirit will sleep in peace, or if it thinks, it will not surely think thus. Farewell." After her husband's death, she returned to England. She asked her father for some assistance, and her father replied in a letter with these words: "Frankenstein is the most wonderful work to have ever been written. At 20 years of age, and I have never heard of something like that. If you are now 5 and 20, so she was only 25. If you are now 5 and 20, and most fortunately, you have pursued a course of reading and cultivated your mind in a manner the most admirable, adapted to make you a great and successful author. If you cannot be independent, who should be?" Meaning, he didn't support her. She didn't receive anything from her father. So she dedicated the remainder of her life to editing the works of her husband, Percy Shelley, having those works published, writing her memoirs with Percy Shelley, and she also wrote a couple of novels, The Last Man and Matilda, an autobiographic novel, and she also wrote a few short stories. The only child who survived to adulthood was Florence, and she dedicated her life to taking care of her child and to helping destitute women. She died from a brain tumor at the age of 53. So this is wrapping up. This is what Mary Shelley's life was. Thank you.